Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Great to see you all again. I want to thank Cheryl, Sue, and the rest of the board for the invitation tonight. I want to personally thank Mary for her leadership in the past year. It's great to see you all here and have the opportunity to address you with some of the policy that I'm talking about on Beacon Hill, and then to hear from you a little. I hope we have time for some question and answer period. We can address some of the issues that are affecting the entire Commonwealth, specifically the city of Boston, and this community to the north end. I want to thank Maria for being here from the mayor's office. Michael's here from Lydia Edwards' office, and no one's here from Aaron's office because they're so busy right now. You know, this community is so fortunate that I think the speaker and the rest of the House has finally realized what we've known for so long, and that's what a rising star Aaron Michaelowicz is. Disappointment to him being the chair of the Ways and Means Committee we're so fortunate to have him. I'm so fortunate to serve alongside him for this neighborhood, but this neighborhood will benefit from here on out as long as he's in that chair. So just congratulations to all of you for Aaron's success in this past month. It's really great. They released their version of the budget, $42+ billion budget yesterday. So he's been handling a lot of press. He's meeting with a lot of members, but he's in a real good spot. So we should all be very proud. Back to me though, last year I served as the housing chair for the Senate. We're working on housing affordability statewide. You know, Boston and the Commonwealth, as wonderful of a city and state that it is, we rank 47th in the nation in housing affordability. The average rent in my district is about $2,600 a month. The city in this Commonwealth is becoming unaffordable for people to live in. You know, we've seen tremendous growth in our business sectors. We've added in the last 10 years, about 240,000 people to the Commonwealth. We've added about 350,000 jobs to the Commonwealth. What we haven't done is added adequate housing to the Commonwealth. And that's an interesting thing to say to a bunch of Bostonians, where seemingly housing is happening all around us. And that's important because it does, in the supply and demand economy, more housing will keep a cap on housing. Will keep a cap on prices. But what we're seeing and what we're experiencing statewide is not enough municipalities around the city of Boston are helping with the housing crisis. Not enough municipalities around the city that have access to public transit are building any housing at all. In fact, 80% of the housing, the multifamily housing built in this Commonwealth in the last 10 years has only happened in 5 cities. Those cities are Boston, as you can imagine, Cambridge, Somerville, Canton, and Brockton. So last year we worked very hard on an affordable housing bond bill that invested $1.8 billion into our affordable housing stock to keep and preserve housing that already is affordable, but also bring online more housing and produce affordable housing and housing that's affordable. You know, unfortunately in this Commonwealth, sometimes when we think of affordable housing, we think of like your brick and mortar projects or housing developments. But affordable housing is really housing that can, that can house people who are coming out of college with tremendous student debt, unfortunately at this time, and enable them to live in our communities. Also, baby boomers who are retiring, who want to downsize. They too need affordable housing stock in our city and around Greater Boston, so they can afford to age in place. So this housing bond bill, $1.8 billion, will be invested in those types of housing projects. People who make, 60% of AMI up to 110% of AMI. First-time home buyers projects through Mass Housing and Finance. So programs like that. But the other side of that coin, now that we've given money to build more housing, we need to do more for municipalities in order to lift zoning restrictions and enable people to have a multifamily housing project in municipalities and get that through so that we can level some of the housing costs in our Commonwealth. So we're working on a housing choice bill at the State House that will lower the voting threshold at zoning boards for housing projects. I'm advocating strongly for multifamily mandates along public transit corridors, beyond the city of Boston. and the ability to build an accessory dwelling unit as a way of right. So housing is obviously an important topic. It's something I like to talk about with some of my background. This year I'm fortunate to be named as the Senate's chair of the Transportation Committee, the Joint Committee. So we're working on transit, and transportation is probably something that's on everyone's mind in this room, with Boston being ranked the worst city in the country for congestion just a couple months ago, and dealing with a transit system in the RT. It's really a 19th century transit line in the 21st century. So we need to do more to help our public transit move about. We need to do more to alleviate some of the congestion concerns around these cities. So we're beginning to venture into the policy areas that do some of that stuff. We just released a bond bill in the Senate and the House for Chapter 90, which is local roads. After a very difficult winter, you'll notice a lot more potholes and some of the stuff we've seen. So through Chapter 90, the state gives the cities money. Boston gets a large portion of that money to begin repairs on some of our local roads. So you can expect that coming out. The House and Senate just agreed to release a bill regarding hands-free driving to prohibit people from operating a motor vehicle with a phone in their hand. And I think it's really important, public safety issue that we've heard more and more about, to sit in that hearing on that bill and hear the families, husbands and wives who've lost significant others, who've lost children due to people who are distracted drivers, is really difficult to hear. I'm happy to announce that the House and the Senate have come to agreement to get something done on this. So it's been released out of the Transportation Committee. It'll be on the floor soon, and that's something we continue to talk about. But the state of public transit in this Commonwealth is difficult. The MBTA currently has about $7.5 billion state of good repair deficit. That means we need $7.5 billion invested in that system so we can get to a safe, reliable, accessible, and equitable T system. So finding that money is difficult. Like we talked about before, the budget that Aaron released yesterday is about a $42 billion budget. So obviously it doesn't come from there, but we need to begin to think about new revenues for our transit system and how to strategically invest for the long term. Because our roads and highways and bridges are about a $7 billion $5 billion state of good repair, and our local roads are about $2 billion. So we need to start thinking about ways to raise money to invest into our system so it is a safe and reliable transit system fully. And I'll take questions on that in a minute. A couple other areas I'm working on in criminal justice reform. Obviously, last year we passed the most progressive and broadest criminal justice reform bill this Commonwealth seen in about 50 years. Some things were left on the table regarding juvenile justice and how minors are treated in our juvenile system. So I've taken the lead in the Senate on some of those issues. And then there's always the issues around cost control on prescriptions and transparency and how pharmaceuticals are sold. Things are working on. I know we have a packed meeting tonight, and I do want to hear from you a little bit to give me that opportunity. So that's the gist of it. There's a lot more. I filed about 450 bills this year, so there's a lot to talk about.
Senator, what about the red flag gun control issue?
Yeah.
Taking away guns from people who could harm themselves and others.
So last year, after another unfortunate school shooting, we heard from high schoolers all across the Commonwealth. They walked out of school. They walked up to the State House. They demanded action. And we took action. The House and Senate came together on a red flag gun law that would essentially give a person the opportunity to go into court if their family member, friend, or someone they're in any really relationship, if that person has a gun and this person thinks that they are going to do harm to themselves or do harm to another, they can petition to court to have that gun taken away on a temporary restraining order basis, and then in a couple days there'll be a full hearing as on whether or not that person should fully lose the rights to that weapon. So, I'm sorry.
But it wasn't enacted, was it?
Yes, it was. It was signed into law last year.
It was, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So the
sorry.
governor signed it at the end of maybe in June of last, May or June of last year. Yeah, so it is a lot of the land, and yeah. If you have any concerns about that, though, feel free to let my office. Mike.
I just have a quick question on the MBTA, because I do agree with you, I don't mind paying the taxes. But can we expect better governance by the MBTA in terms of looking at efficiencies and things like that?
Yeah.
So we can add money and
See where it's going.
and really, well, yes, and leverage it with better efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of years ago in 2013, I guess, the legislature installed a fiscal control board, the FMCB, Fiscal Management Control Board, I should say, which is now the governing authority over the MBTA's fiscal status and their budgets. And it's worked very well. We've seen real improvements on our core system, on the orange line and the red line, and improving switches, and bringing new trains online, so on and so forth. But we're in a state where, there needs to be more. The fair share tax amendment was on the ballot, otherwise known as the Millionaire's Tax, and I should say never got to the ballot because the Supreme Court, threw it out. That half of that money was going to go to public transit, so we suffered a real loss there for revenues in the future. The gas tax is only going so far. And, what can we really expect in a gas tax in 10, 15, and 20 years, where more cars are moving away from fuel and into like electric vehicles and stuff like that.
Well, my question actually is concerned about the efficiency of the operation.
Yeah.
Hire people to do the job and things like that. It's so much better when we have confidence, in a system.
No, I couldn't agree more. And, you're right to not have confidence in the system. For the past, 30 years, I think the system wasn't managed as efficiently as it could have. Since the Fiscal Control Board has come online, I think since we've seen more improvements in the modernization, electrification of some of the MBTA systems, we're beginning to experience a more efficient system. We know when things are breaking. They're addressing them right away. Unfortunately, because of the age of the system, things are still breaking. So, we need capital money infused into that system to get it to a safe and reliable transit system.
Senator, with the casino about to open and with the building boom going on in Charlestown, and especially at Sullivan Square, there's been mention that the drawbridge is going to be used again to ferry in some of the patrons of the casinos. Do you know about that? And are we going to now have super traffic gridlock when that drawbridge goes up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I haven't seen transportation plans at this time for a ferry system from the casino. I know they have plans for one. Boston Harbor now has been working over the last 2 years on a comprehensive inner harbor ferry system that, I think they're rolling it out in the next week. So we'll see if there's a line on it at that time. But, we have to do more to alleviate some of the congestion that, we're going to deal with naturally with the rebuilding of the bridge to Charlestown and other issues. So I would say nothing's etched in stone on a ferry line to and from the casino. I think more comprehensively, there is a study going on of our inner harbor ferry system and to see, what works and what lines won't work. So I'm happy to update you, or if you call my office the next week after the rollout of the Boston Harbor Now program, I'm happy to let you know.
Thank you.
And the conversation doesn't have to end here. Any inquiries you have, feel free to reach out. Luigi Natali, who's at your meetings, or should be at your meetings. He's not available, so. Yeah, right?
That's a good one.
He's all right. We'll keep him.
Yeah, we will keep him.
But I know you have a lot. Is there anything else? If not, I just want to, I'm sorry.
You said you were working on lifting zoning restrictions. Could you give us an example or two of the kind of zoning restrictions you'd like to be?
So currently, if you're zoning in a municipality, and this really doesn't apply to Boston, because Boston has its own zoning code that's really different than the other 350 municipalities around the Commonwealth and really around Boston. But essentially, if you need a variance or a special permit in a city or town, that special permit or variance can only be approved by a 2/3 vote of the governing body. So that means if you're at a city council with 11 people on, you need 2/3. If you're at a town council with 7 people on, you need 2/3 for a variance or a special permit. The problem really lies in our small towns in the Commonwealth that have town meeting. Because in a town meeting, whether that's a closed meeting or an open meeting, closed meeting, town meeting is, members are elected, but they're elected up, like, there could be 150 town meeting members. Or in an open town meeting, everyone in town can show up, and that's a throwback to the puritanical, like, New England we once were. But that still happens, so you have a zoning project that's going on for, elderly housing or affordable housing, and people with an NIMBYism attitude will show up to these meetings and just vote no against everything. And the threshold is so high. So the first thing the zoning bill would do would be just lower that threshold to a simple majority, which is what we decided most of, in democracy. That's one bigger piece of a very large bill. So.
Well, just quickly, there is in fact a program being proposed in Boston called the ADU, Additional Dwelling
Accessory
Unit
dwelling.
Zoning Language, which I will speak about during the CLC report, so stick around, don't leave.
There you go. Happy to open up a Victor tonight. Thank you, guys.